All right, the scene of the corner wall and Broad today, we had a big sell of about 166 points. A lot of that in financial-related issues, not exclusively, but a big chunk of it. And all concerns that Deutsche Bank, the big German financial concern, was in a world of hurt and might need to be bailed out by the German government. They say over there that all of this is much ado about nothing. The Deutsche is well capitalized. And as far as spillover effects, there's no reason to fear another financial meltdown, the likes of which we had 8 years ago, and, of course, influenced that election. Could be on the verge of doing so again. Robert Wolf joins us right now, the former UBS Americas CEO. We've got Charles Payne, of course, Hadley Heath Manning, the Independent Women's Forum. So, Robert, to you first. You obviously remember that period very well. Do you think what's going on with Deutsche now and fears of a contagion are justified?
Well, Neil, you and I spent a lot of hours talking during that Lehman crisis when I was there. I think this is totally different. I don't think there's contagion. The U.S. banks are completely well-capitalized, delevered, high Tier 1 ratio. So I just don't see it the same way. But certainly Deutsche has to make sure they have the right underpinning of capital. And it will be interesting whether they have to do some sort of rights issue of some sort. But certainly Merkel was firm in her idea that she would not be bailing anyone out.
All right. He obviously referring to Angela Merkel, the head of Germany. Charles Payne, what do you make of that?
You know, it wasn't long ago when the tiny banks in Greece used to have us on edge every single day. You talk about the tiniest of banks. So Deutsche Bank, one of the largest banks by assets, certainly we've got to be concerned. It is interesting. They say they're in good shape. Germany says we don't need to come to the rescue. But obviously we saw the session today on Wall Street. The bank also has other issues, and I think this should not be overlooked. They're saying this is all revolves around that $14 billion fine levied by America. But they had some issues before this. This wasn't a great rip-roaring stock in the first place. Italy's banks are in trouble. And, of course, I've already mentioned Greece, which has not totally gone away. So we've got to keep an eye on it. We can't be really sanguine about this not necessarily being a problem, because it could be.
Hadley Heath Manning, of course, that whole financial crisis 8 years ago certainly greased the skids for John McCain's tumble. Because as it escalated and things went just kablooey, so did his poll numbers. Do you envision anything like that affecting this race?
Well, certainly the economy at large is going to continue to be the #1 issue in this race. And tonight, as Clinton and Trump face off, Clinton's got to walk a very difficult fine line between being positive about the past 8 years and President Obama's economic agenda, most of which she supports, while also using language like this. Expect her to say the economy is working, but it's not working for everyone. And as usual, she will try to make Wall Street out to be the boogeyman, when in fact many of the policies from the Obama years are to blame for leaving many Americans behind.
Robert Wolf, as someone who studies this, and I know you're a Hillary Clinton backer, I mean, people are looking at these markets and say, politically, no matter what your points of view, they have nowhere to go but down. They've had a great run, and, Barack Obama said, Hillary Clinton said, look at stocks under 8 years of Democrats. They've doubled. We're hardly off to the races, but I think the argument is off the mat. You still say that is her pitch, right?
Well, there's no question. I mean, first of all, to talk about where the markets are, under Obama we're at an all-time high. So I think some people would be saying, not too bad. Obviously, 75 straight months of private sector job gains. But to respond to I think it's a binary choice. It's where Donald Trump economy is going, which is going back to trickle-down economics, versus Secretary Clinton's. And if you look at the independent studies being done, Trump's adds $5 trillion plus to the deficit and loses jobs based on his deportation program, whereas Secretary Clinton's adds jobs. So if we're really worrying about middle income and wages going up...
It's all estimates, bottom line. But Charles Payne, I want to get your sense...
They're both the same...
Well, but
they're using the same model,
though. Score this. But, Charles, one of the things that comes up is that Hillary Clinton also has close to $2 trillion in tax hikes coming over the next decade. Now, she argues that is a means, largely by going after the rich, to pay for these programs. What do you make of that?
It's the giant welfare utopia. It's the idea that our economy has peaked, there's nowhere to grow, and now it's incumbent upon the Democrats to find a way to divvy up the spoils, if you will. It has no faith in small business, it has no faith in entrepreneurs. It says to everyone that the American dream is over, and I think that's the wrong message to send, and the wrong policies to establish as well.
So how does Donald Trump have to counter that, Hadley, tonight?
Well, I would agree, and I think Mr. Trump should agree that the economy is not working for everyone. The real questions are, why is that so, and what are we going to do about it? So when we look at the past 8 years, it's been a clear failure pursuing policies like Obamacare, instead of the fact of the matter being that not everyone is working. So if we want to pursue an economic agenda that works for everyone, we've got to get everyone to work. And when we look at labor force participation rates, we see that hasn't really been the case. So ultimately, Mr. Trump has to make the argument that he's going to do that. He's going to jumpstart this economy, get more Americans back to work, and allow it to be, as Mrs. Clinton describes it, an economy that works for everyone.
Neil, I would just like to add, when you hit Obamacare, the 20 million newly insured, okay, trust me, they're glad they have Obamacare. Okay, so
no,
I mean,
they need health care. They don't need health insurance. They don't need health coverage. They need health care.
Some of the other Americans
Obamacare doesn't change anything about the reality of
other Americans who are paying much premiums. All right, guys, we saved time by talking over one another. I thank you for that. When we come back, we're going to hear from Bob.